Hey everybody, Spegtacular, the Silver Stacular. I want you to get the most out of your collection, whether you're going to sell it at a coin shop or sell it online. I want you to get the best bang for your buck, do a little research, and make sure that your collectibles are getting the maximum amount of value possible. The worst thing that you can possibly do is go into like a coin shop and just say like, hey, I have this item right here. How much do you want to give me for it? Boom. And not have any kind of research in your arsenal, in your tool belt. You don't want to do that because you're just going to get had each and every time, right? So you want to go into a shop, you want to go into some kind of online source with an idea of what you have. And the more research you do on the piece, the better you might do. If you don't have time to do it, hey, just don't even watch this video. You're wasting your time right now, my goodness. But there's so many resources out there now for us. So we have like things like this, the Red Book Quarterly, which is a price guide that comes out quarterly, believe it or not, and it kind of gives us some ideas on coins. So coins are a lot easier. However, there's still some things you want to look for in coins. I'll talk about that in this video briefly. But there's other sources too, like the regular Red Book of Coins, and you know that one right there, the one that comes out. It's a yearly issue. Typically, the prices that are in here are not as up to date as the quarterly version because obviously the quarterly version comes out more often. However, I like looking online. Sold listings and comparable listings online tend to be one of your best bets. However, sometimes online will lead you astray too. There's plenty of influencers, there's plenty of websites that are selling stuff that people can literally list whatever they want at any price and make you think that you have a modern quarter that's worth $500,000. So it's a good idea to really know what you're doing. Also, joining a coin forum where there's also places you can talk about precious metals and not just coins, like precious metals and paper money, etc. on those coin forums, and asking opinions of other people would be a great idea for you to get started in your journey if you want to go ahead and get some more information and do some better research. Get involved with the community that way, and they're usually pretty good at giving you information. And lots of outlets. There's lots of coin forums of different kinds and social media places where people talk about coins. But I want to show you some examples of things in this video that you're going to want to really look out for. So recently I found somebody that has been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, and they sold an item for $20, and the item was actually worth a few hundred. And I told him afterwards, I said, hey, oops, you know what I mean? Next time, if there is a next time, really focus on certain parts of the thing you sold, because you kind of made a little boo-boo right there to the tune of a couple $100 that you could have, definitely made more money on. So here is an example of a Florida goldback, right? Whether you like goldbacks or not, that's not the point of this whatsoever. The point is, here you have a piece, and it's, graded 70. It's a perfect grade. It's a limited edition of only 8,000 pieces. Great. These right here typically sell for about $270 or so, right, as it is. However, what you really want to do is, if you have pieces that have certain limited features on them, let's call it, you really want to focus on those features. So for instance, on these right here, each one is serialized, and that's something you want to know when you're going to sell certain things. And you can see the serial number right here, and this is 0158 of only 8,000 made. So if I'm getting a piece that has a low serial number, like in the 100s, that right there can sometimes add a premium to the piece. So be careful when you sell your things, and make sure you're focusing on serial numbers too, because sometimes those can add a lot of value. And I've actually sold some of these with lower serial numbers, and they have sold for more than just pieces with in the 2000s or 3000 numbers. So just an FYI right there. There's also some serial numbers that may be on the higher level, right? But those are really hard to come by for whatever reason. That might be something you have to research too. So definitely focus on certain rare factors within a piece, right? And don't just go for the entire piece and say, hey, I've Googled, this information. This is what the piece is. Sometimes the piece has special little factors like that serial number that will make it worth more, and it makes it worth your while to do that research. So that's an example of that. Kind of something similar right here. So here is a very hard to come by fantasy piece, right? This is a 2022 peace dollar, but it's not. It's actually made at a private mint from Daniel Carr, who strikes these things privately and does, honestly, in my opinion, he does a better job than the United States Mint does on these pieces. So this is a great looking fantasy piece right here. And he's actually signed the piece. And you can see that the little tag that came with this says Daniel Carr, 1 of 2 broad strike. 1 of 2. So when you do more research on this piece, you find that this is actually ultra rare. 1 of 2. Even though it's made at a private mint, Daniel Carr is actually a very famous name when it comes to minting pieces. So this piece right here is one of those ones where you're going to have a hard time finding a similar piece to it, right? A price that you can go like, well, this one sold for XYZ, so therefore mine should sell for, this price. It's hard. It's hard to determine that price. The best thing you can do is get some, ideas from the community, kind of show something like this on social media and just be like, hey, is there any interest, how much would you charge for something like this, et cetera, et cetera. You can go, if there are sold listings for something so rare like this, and let's say the, similar one sold for, I don't know, $300, right? You can say, well, that one sold for $300. These don't come out in the market very often. That sold 2 years ago at that price. What is this one worth? And, sometimes that stuff is difficult, but you just kind of have to gauge the community. If you're listing it online, you could start at something crazy like, like if the last one sold at 300 and this is like the last one available, the other one is like, it's 1 of 2, you can start this one at 500. If it doesn't sell after a few months, you can just start bumping it down in price a little bit until it goes, if you're really, trying to sell it. But that can be a little bit more difficult, something that's very, very rare or, almost one of a kind. And in some cases too, when it's one of a kind, it's almost something you might want to think about sending it off to auction, making it an auction piece, because then you can get a better price for it at like an actual auction house as opposed to like a online auction house. So that could be a little bit more difficult. If you have stuff like this, if you have gold, trying to find out what the carat is, trying to find out like maybe the area of origin, et cetera, is all important, because when people buy things, they want to know certain factors. And I'm not saying, when I show this gold right here, I'm not saying like, hey, if you have gold, this is what you have to do. But if you have any piece, you might want to know some factors behind it, right? Where did it come from? What's the provenance of it, et cetera, et cetera. Have the facts ready to go. And especially if you're listing stuff online, you want to build a good description of the items you're listing, right? You want to seem like you're professional and you know what you're talking about. You've done your research, and here is some information for you when you're making a purchase, fellas. There's some easy access info. So, an example right there, I named off 2 different things that you want to make sure that you look for when it comes to gold, but that can go towards anything. Make sure you know what you're talking about. And here's a piece right here, although it's not gold, know what the mint is. You see this little symbol right here, know what that mint is. That way when you're listing it, you can say, hey, this is what this piece is. And when you're looking it up, you can find out, what that piece is. This is Monarch Precious Metals, by the way. And so you really want to know what things are. You don't want to list this as a 10-ounce piece, and then somebody ends up returning it and going like, hey, that's only a 5-ounce piece. Like, what are you trying to do to me here? And now you might be out on shipping money, and, it makes you look bad. You can get negative feedback. You really want to know what you're doing, do the right research, weigh things out, et cetera, et cetera. If you have pieces that are just plain Jane, make sure that that's what they are. Make sure that they're just like regular bullion pieces, or just, coins that aren't worth that much. Make sure, again, that they don't have some special factors like a low serial number, or maybe they have really good toning, right? Sometimes toning sells. So here's a piece right here that is toned up. Maybe that adds a little value. In some cases it does. In some cases, with some bullion pieces, it may not. Make sure you know what you're doing. Here's a piece right here that's a little bit more difficult. So here is an 8 real Spanish piece right here. And these pieces it's something that realistically, when you are buying and selling these, you really better know what you're doing, right? You better have the guide, so to speak. You better be able to know what these numbers and symbols and stuff mean. You don't want to make a mistake on this, either buying or selling. There's a lot of fakes out there of these things. So you want to make sure that you're buying from reputable sources, because if you end up selling a fake to somebody, there goes your reputation for sure. And you don't want to be that person that has that reputation of selling fakes to the community, because that right there, one time doing that could be the last time. So this is an example of something right here that you really better know what you're doing before you get involved in. Even before you sell one, you better know your P's and Q's and your reals. Here's an example of a piece that kind of goes back to my first talking point of knowing what's going on within that piece a little bit better. So here you have an Oregon Mint State 64 PCGS 1934 Denver. Blast white, looks like it probably was dipped at some point. It's hard to imagine that silver would survive. It's 90 years old, 91 years old right now at this point. It's hard to imagine that silver would go this long and not tone at all. This is an example right here of a piece that's been on my desk for only like 2 years. And look at the toning that's happened on this. So I'm not sure how a piece like this could, go for 90 years with less protection than that piece right there had and look like that. But whatever, that's a different story. That being said, you might go, okay, well, this is a coin. This is easy for me. I'm just going to look at the quarterly red book and find a 1934D Oregon in there at Mint State 64. Boom. This is so simple. However, there's a few factors you really want to focus on when it comes to coins. First of all, some beautiful toning can add a lot of value to a coin. So you start seeing some rainbow effects around the edge or around certain parts of the coin. That can add a lot of value. On the same token, some nasty looking toning could also reduce the value because the eye appeal is starting to come down a little bit on the piece. So, it could be a double-edged sword depending on what kind of toning it is, but typically toning adds some value to the coins. Also, if you look at this piece right here, you're thinking, hey, graded in PCGS, bada bang, I'll go to sold listings and find PCGS graded Mint State 64 coins. Not a big deal. However, you want to focus on other aspects of this, like the PCGS grading of an old holder. So this is an older holder that PCGS did. Here is an example of a newer holder. You can see the blue right there. The old greens are a older style. You start getting in the ones that have a movement to them when you shake the piece, the rattlers. That's an even older holder. But these old holders tend to have a premium above the newer counterparts, believe it or not. And I know the saying is you buy the coin, not the holder. However, that saying is flawed because the holder can add some value depending on what's going on there to the piece. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's, it is what it is. But the facts of the matter is it does in this current environment of coin collecting that we have. The holder can add value. And these older holders tend to have increased value. So if you had an Oregon Mint State 64, this same exact coin right here next to it, in a new holder, the green holder should sell for more each and every time, just because, and it also is going to bring more customers in that will buy this holder as opposed to the old holder, just naturally, because there's a belief that in the old times of grading, the older PCGS days, NGC has older holders too, those older grading standards were much more hard on coins than they are today. So some people believe that this Mint State 64 might be able to eke out a 65 in today's standards, and so they tend to buy the older coins, crack them out, get them regraded, and they add a lot of value to the coin, these older holders. So that's an example of knowing everything about the piece that you have. An older holder can be worth more money. And so doing your research, like I mentioned, can tell you some of these like little tiny factors, Here's an example of another slightly older holder, although not much older. You can just see that things are a little bit older. And that might add, a little bit of value. Probably not much, because people tend to look for the green coloration to just quickly identify the older holders. But that is still a little bit older. And you can see a new modern PCGS holder right here in comparison to the two. So there you go. If you're ever curious about that kind of stuff, I believe that PCGS has a archive on their website. I think it's on their website. That shows like kind of the progression of how their holders have gone throughout the years, just to get some ideas of what some of the older ones may look like. In some cases right here, this is a difficult coin to really identify the value on. This has been difficult for me. It has had, has kind of a low mintage. This coin has some problems. So, when you have a raw coin like this, trying to compare it to other coins, because you might not be a grading expert when it comes to Dominican Republic's coin, right? So you might have to go to other coins that are graded, whatever, certain grades, and try to compare your coin to it and be like, okay, that looks like about the same wear, the same style, same toning, same condition, so my coin is probably around this grade right here, and make some assumptions on the grade. And then you can try to sell it from there. Try to do comparable sold listings, try to get some information on what these things should go for. And in some cases, depending on the coins, they are very difficult. Here's a coin right here that I've had tremendous difficulty with trying to find comparable listings. There's not a whole lot of them out there, and trying to find something that's comparable is very, very rough. But that's part of the fun sometimes of coin collecting, is trying to figure out what the heck you have. And doing the research, going to online resources, and sometimes those people that are online, they love that, Sherlock Holmes stuff. You put a picture of a coin on there, and the more obscure for them, the better, because they're going to go out and do that research for you. So that's, again, why it's important to join a coin forum or two and try to have somebody else, on your back to help you out when it comes to valuing your collection. And you just, like I said, you just don't want to go into a coin shop. You don't want to go to a coin show without any kind of research and offer it to a dealer and be like, hey, what is this right here? I want to sell it. Because you will get had each and every single time. Even if you have some research behind you, they're going to say, hey, it's not that big of a deal. And whatever you have is not that big of a deal. And whatever they have tends to be rare each and every time. It's how it works. That's part of the hobby. So know what you're doing. Have an idea of what something's value is before you even go in. And, maybe have an idea of the minimal amount you're willing to take. If you've ever watched Pawn Stars, they always say, like, hey, what's the least amount you're going to take for this item today? And somebody will say, bringing this into the Pawn Star guys today, the least amount I'm going to take for this right here is $300. Boom. And then, you have a area that you're not going to go below, as long as you can stick to your guns. Hopefully this video kind of helped, at least give you some ideas of what to do and things to look for. And, I kind of want to sprinkle that in your mind so that next time you have an idea that if you want to sell something, or at least have an idea of what the value might be in case you one day need to sell or would like to sell, or, somebody needs to sell it, to have some kind of, some ammunition to use for your pieces to make sure that you're selling it for the maximum amount. I got to go for now. I appreciate you for watching. Leave a comment down below, some other suggestions that you might have. Spegtacular is out. Well, hello, everybody. I seek to educate and entertain through my journey of collecting coins and stacking precious metals. I encourage you to subscribe, and please stay with me on this journey. I am Spegtacular, the Silver Stacular. When I was a kid, we did this every day in school, and I believe we need to bring this back a little bit, and I'm going to start right now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.